1 second. Okay, I think now we are ready to start. So Irene, please present our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Kostas. So we will start today's session with Professor Luigi Occhipinti, if I pronounce it right.
Perfect.
So Professor Luigi Occhipinti has 25 plus years of experience in research and innovation across multiple engineering disciplines, including flexible sensors, biomedical devices, AI, and nanomaterials. He has published over 170 peer-reviewed papers and holds over 90 patents. He is a senior member of IEE and has contributed to several multinational research programs and conferences. So today's presentation, Professor Luigi Occhipinti's presentation entitled Wearable Smart Edge Devices for Personal Assistance and Health Monitoring will delve into wearable smart edge devices and integrate printable sensors, electronics, and AI technologies for personalized diagnostics and healthcare. The presentation will explore power-efficient designs using eco-friendly materials and innovative energy harvesting solutions to reduce reliance on batteries. Professor Occhipinti will also discuss multimodal sensor data analysis and the role of AI in optimizing wearable devices. So, Professor Occhipinti, I would again like to thank you once again for accepting our invitation to contribute to this event, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the very nice introduction and kind invitation. Okay, so I will start with introducing the topic from the edge computing point of view. So these days we are assisting to an exponential growth of Internet of Things, which drives the transition from centralized cloud-based or internet-based computing towards edge computing. And here the edge devices are the hardware enabling IoT applications in different market sectors, from smart surfaces to smart lighting, personal healthcare, packaging, application in security, logistics, and others. This also means that more and more edge devices are gradually becoming portable and autonomous, both from the energy and from the data processing standpoints, so that they can be embedded into everyday objects. So for either long-term operation at low duty cycle, as in the case of sensor networks, or with shorter lifetime, as for instance in the case of disposable electronics or smart labels or single-use sensors for personal healthcare monitoring. So this transition sometimes is also called the fourth industrial revolution or Industry 4.0, depending on the application, of course. Now, another of the key drivers for the central to edge computing transition when it comes to AI-based or AI-powered computing is the need to process information in real time at very low latency, as in the case when data are collected from sensor networks and require continuous processing and interpretation of their data, as well as the need to, of course, reduce power consumption to build technologies that are sustainable. For instance, when it comes to high-performance computing hardware and high-bandwidth memory chipsets, nowadays we can easily see cost of the hardware exceeding several thousands of pounds or euro and consuming kilowatts of power, which can only be accepted for centralized computing devices that serve the need of large computational tasks, which are distributed over the internet. But inevitably, this also increases latency and limits portability. So nevertheless, considering the exponential growth of the technologies and use case application of AI, which has seen a surge of interest in the recent years, even the current edge AI hardware technologies tend to increase in complexity and therefore power consumption, leaving us and developers, of course, with less options to run complex algorithms on portable systems without affecting the operational lifetime of systems powered from batteries. Another area of growing interest at the intersection of computational science and healthcare is the development of human body digital twin models. Despite the digital twin concept being well established in many different sectors, its application in healthcare and the human body is still in its infancy, given the complexity of the system and the interdependency between internal and external factors that govern our health. But what is a human body digital twin? It's basically just a virtual representation of personal physiological status for use in different fields, from clinical medicine to pre- and post-surgery assessment and other fields, of course. So the digital twin is created to reflect real-time data collected from sensors and medical test devices, and the use of the resulting models aim at predicting and optimizing outcomes of health interventions through advanced analysis and modeling. So earlier this year, we published a review, actually a perspective paper on a technology roadmap for human body digital twin assisted by wearable sensors and AI. And this is now published on Nature Review Electrical Engineering. So in this paper, we anticipated a 5-level roadmap for the development of human body digital twins, starting from level 1, which is what we call the cross-sectional model, aiming at determining the various human health indicators by using AI classification methods on real-time data. So in the level 2, what we call the deductive model, this is built on the level 1, but incorporates not only real-time data, but also past data to train predictive models for forecasting future health conditions. And in the level 3, this is an editable model, which extends the previous 2 levels by considering human intervention. It could be drug treatment or organ transplants or even gene editing to analyze and predict the outcome, the health outcome post-intervention. And in level 4, the evolutionary model is mainly meant to take into account the impact on human body of external environment changes, like the solar exposure, diet, or interpersonal connection, and so on and so forth. And finally, in the level 5, what is the explainable model is basically using explainable AI methods and techniques to delve into the underlying logic of health analysis and predictions. So basically it explores not just the output results from data, but also the biological principles which are involved, so that the overall model can be trusted by users and clinicians. So a key element of developing a reliable and effective human body digital twin, as said, is the use of sensors, and specifically wearable sensors for collecting health, medical, and wellness data. And the development of human body digital twins aligns well with the trends that are experienced in the recent years in terms of growth rate of the wearable sensor units, not only for the regulated market, but also from the unregulated or wellness market. Although in the regulated market, we can see that despite the impact of COVID-19 pandemic between 19 and 21, still the market is growing double digit and actually in the range of 19% especially for medical devices. So, and this comes with the different form factors from wristbands to earables to textiles, skin patches, and so on and so forth. But to expand further on the market adoption of next generation wearables, end user acceptance is critical, is crucial. Also in terms of reliability, comfortability, and energy efficiency. So there was already a survey in end user acceptance of wearable devices back in conducted in USA and Europe, which shows that most people are still ready to accept wearing devices in the form of wristband or cloths, but also looking at a new form factor like jewelry, earbuds, and so on. And of course, one of the critical aspects is biocompatibility with skin when it comes to usability, for instance, of skin patches or skin sensors in general, as well as the operating lifetime. This is a very important aspect to consider, especially when the target is to achieve a 24/7 uninterrupted monitoring towards what is called the wear and forget seamless monitoring devices. And I'd like to spend a few minutes to introduce an example. I mean, in this case, I'm taking the example of smart contact lenses, which have been demonstrated for over a decade now. Actually, in this slide, I picked two projects that were starting almost in the same period, around 2010, so 14 years ago. One developed from Google initially in partnership with Microsoft and then with Novartis, which aims at diabetic patients by monitoring tear glucose. And the second one developed by a Swiss company called Sensimed in partnership with my former group at SD Microelectronics, aiming at treatment of glaucoma, actually diagnosis, of the glaucoma in the early stage by monitoring the changes into the intraocular pressure. What is interesting to see is that despite the project starting at the same time and pretty much targeting the same form factor, the continuous glucose monitoring from tears is still a project which is in development, while the intraocular pressure monitoring sensor is being commercialized already since 2016 after getting FDA approval and so on. So part of this success can be explained by the fact that while for intraocular pressure continuous monitoring, there are no other solutions than wearing a contact lens. The other solution being, of course, taking a point-wise measurement of the pressure, but it is impossible to deliver, a 24/7 monitoring, which is actually required by the doctors to deliver the right therapy for this specific disease. In the case of continuous glucose monitoring, there have been several incumbent technologies that exist, although they are mostly invasive or minimally invasive, like finger prick, glucometer, or even continuous glucose monitoring that test the glucose in the interstitial fluid. Another limitation or another challenge for sure is the relatively low concentration of glucose in tears as compared to blood glucose, and possibly the correlation between the two. So proving efficacy is intrinsically more challenging for contact lenses to monitor glucose than it is for intraocular pressure. Certainly, the fact that in the second case, the contact lens is including the thin chip are all fully encapsulated, so they don't need to be in contact with the biological fluid is a big advantage, because it means that we can use a fully biocompatible encapsulation material like the silicone contact lens, which facilitates validation and therefore adoption. Building on this experience, this is another example of a smart wearable sensor patch with battery-assisted RF energy harvesting system. Here the idea was to monitor glucose from sweat and using an NFC link at 13.56 megahertz to harvest enough energy from the reader, which could be an Android smartphone, as needed to recharge the battery, program the microcontroller, interrogate the device, and receive the sensor data wirelessly, while the battery is also used to maintain the memory of the fluctuation of the sensor captured by the sensor in terms of a glucose concentration in sweat. So we built together this project by starting from a simple parametric sensor developed in collaboration with with a former team at ST Micro and Bruno Pignataro at Palermo University, and later integrated in a flexible smart system, which is now being evaluated for commercialization by a company in Australia called Visor Life. As a wristband, including some interesting concept of replacing the sensor with shaping the sensor as a replaceable button-like unit, as well as, of course, the smartphone app and so on. But so let's take a step back and see how a typical flexible electronics autonomous sensor system works. So this is composed by the sensor and the data processing unit, the communication module, and of course the energy subsystems. And last but not least, of course, the substrate. So our aim and research approach in this field has been so far to design and assess the functionality and sustainability of each module, and address the challenge by looking at the design and selection of materials, processing devices, and architectures and system architecture. So let's start with the energy subsystem module, which comprises the energy harvesters, the energy storage, and the power management subsystem. So starting from the energy that is available in the ambient. So we're talking about ambient energy harvesting. There are at least 4 types of energy that can be easily harvested by portable devices. So one is light, either indoor or outdoor, ambient RF, which requires antennas in different wavelength range for GSM or Wi-Fi network, to thermal gradient for thermoelectric generators, which builds upon the difference between the body temperature and the environmental temperature. We recently published a paper on this area as well. And also the mechanical energy, harvesting the mechanical vibrations and movement associated with the motion of the human body in case of wearables. Each of these sources of energy come with different characteristics in terms of availability, power per unit area, and conversion efficiency. So depending on the use case application, one could prefer one or other sources of energy that fits into the specific wearable device form factor. And back in 2021, we published a work in collaboration with Vincenzo Pecuni and Robert Toy, and where we analyzed the requirement and typical energy available from different technologies, as well as from different use cases, such as indoor photovoltaic versus outdoor photovoltaic, or ambient RF, or others. So considering the fact that the source of energy can be intermittent or continuous, as well as the fact that the device absorbed power can vary considerably over time, as in the case of radio communication via Bluetooth or other protocols, there are generally 2 types of reference design. One is what we call harvest use, and the other is harvest store use model. In the harvest use, basically it's a battery-less system, like the case of the contact lens. We harvest enough energy to run the electronics, possibly the sensor, and we maybe use a wireless communication system to transfer the data back to the reader, whether it is a smartphone or a PC or a bespoke reading devices. While in the case of harvest store use architecture, of course, the ambient energy might be harvested through the harvested device and then gradually stored in an energy storage unit, either a battery or a supercapacitor or both. And then this is used with a specific, typically with a given duty cycle to power on the electronics, again, the sensor unit, and then transfer, and then the communication module to transfer the data out to the reader. With this paper, we wanted to specifically look at the energy requirements from different IoT devices, comparing the technologies, and then we focused on the indoor photovoltaic technologies designed for sustainability. and on emerging eco-friendly materials and processes for indoor photovoltaic. So to put things into context, here you see a comparison of 4 IPV technologies, model architectures as well, in terms of both efficiency and sustainability. These are the 2 parameters that we looked at for indoor application. When I talk about indoor application, in the case of indoor photovoltaic, we are considering fluorescent lamps as illumination sources, or white LED sources as well. And we consider the value of the luminance in terms of 1000 lux as a reference point. So it is worth noting that in indoor photovoltaic, the optimum band gap of the materials is in the range of 1.9 to 2.0 electron volt, while for outdoor is typically between 1.1 and 1.4 due to the near infrared component of the terrestrial outdoor solar spectrum. If you look at the theoretical radiative limit or the Shortley case, and the maximum efficiency of a single cells when only loss mechanism is the radiative recombination inside the cell, then the theoretical maximum efficiencies are already informed, where the optimum band gap is and which technology can fit into the requirement. Actually, combining with the sustainability, for instance, starting with the hydrogenated amorphous silicon architecture, this is probably the main commercially available technology for indoor photovoltaic, with good sustainability in terms of economic impact, because it relies on well-established manufacturing processes. However, the technology is limited by a relatively low conversion efficiency in the indoor range, and also is well known. There is an intrinsic degradation mechanism which is induced by light exposure in the first few months of operation. So these are the main limitations for which sustainability is still in the plus, but of course it's not great and it could be better when considering other technologies. Also in terms of DSSC, of course, DSSC dye sensitive solar cells, they have a perfect fit with in the band gap regime, and typically one of the key challenges for this technology is that although in the past historically these have been were based on dyes like ruthenium-based dyes, which is a scarce element that negatively impacted the overall sustainability profile of the device. Nowadays, there have been a lot of works focusing on replacement of ruthenium-based dyes with organic dyes, and so on and so forth. So that's for DSSC. Also in terms of the OPV, organic photovoltaic, these are also very good candidates in terms of sustainability. These are probably the most accepted green materials, if you allow me. However, and typically these were based on a bulk heterojunction with fullerene-based electron acceptor. However, fullerene-based electron acceptors suffer from light-induced degradation, and also they are relatively expensive in terms of synthetic cost. So more recent, the trend has been towards a non-fullerene-based acceptor with longer-term stability to light exposure, but slightly higher production cost as well. So there is a balance between environmental sustainability and economic sustainability on the other side. And finally, lead-halide perovskite. Of course, you know better than me that perovskites have been entered the scene very recently, but rapidly grow in interest. So they are the ideal candidate for high efficiency solar cells, both outdoor and indoor, reaching power conversion efficiencies higher than the incumbent technologies. However, the key challenge in lead-halide perovskite so far has been, the limited photothermal and environmental stability due to the presence of the methylammonium cation, which sometimes can be compensated by other introduced barrier layers or control of the interfaces, or even considering different cations with better stability. And the other point is that, of course, by definition, lead-halide perovskite contain lead, which is, although in very small quantities, still seen as a potentially hazardous element, along with some of the solvents that are used in this technology. So for these reasons, and mostly as a scientific investigation, we looked at what is called, what we called lead free perovskite inspired materials, which are basically non-toxic lead-free perovskite equivalents of the of the lead-halide perovskite. And in this publication with Judith Driscoll at Cambridge and Vincenzo Pecuni and Robert Toy, we reviewed the different lead-free perovskite inspired absorbers for indoor photovoltaic, and investigated two classes of materials, one based on bismuth and the other based on antimony compounds, which have lower level toxicity than lead-based compounds. Just to put things into context, I mean, for what concern bismuth, this is there has been very little evidence of toxicity. So bismuth is known as the green element to some extent, and even the growth process is using non-hazardous precursors. So it's relatively, it's well accepted in terms of environmental sustainability, if you wish, as well as antimony-based compounds. They have a workplace exposure limit 3 times higher than the lead-based materials. So it's also more benign than lead-based, lead-halide perovskite-based materials. So critically, both these compounds have optimum band gap in the range of 1.9 electron volt, with is specifically 1.93 for bismuth and 1.95 for antimony-based compounds. And another feature which was well explored in this paper was they are a layered, they have a layer structure rather than a zero-dimensional crystal structure, which contributes to improve the charge mobility. And ultimately, this also impacts the efficiency of these absorbers. And finally, another interesting finding was that although these materials have a very low efficiency both in indoor and outdoor, while in outdoor the conversion efficiency is in the range of 1%, it increases by 4 or 5 times when it goes from outdoor to indoor. Yes, and they're also stable for a long period of time, which is promising. Of course, in terms of efficiency, we can't compare this material with the lead-halide perovskite base. I mean, in terms of so it's only works when you have to power a very low power consumption unit or electronics. And for this reason, we also explored low power electronics, so ultra low power electronics. So in this work, we reported back in 2020 ultra low power printed electronics as a result of a collaboration with also Thomas Antopoulos and Vincenzo Pecuni. So we developed a unique printed semiconductor carbon nanotubes-based transistor technology with some nanodielectric, and we use these devices. So we use this approach to exploit sub-threshold regime operating devices. So instead of operating in the normal regime, we use the carbon nanotube-based transistor operated in the sub-threshold regime with operating voltage is lower than 0.5 volt, and achieving power consumption in the range of 10 femtovolts up to 1 picowatt per micron of channel width, which is just a fraction of the normal leakage current in conventional CMOS circuit. And at that time, it was the record low power consumption reported. We demonstrated that in a simple printed CMOS equivalent ambipolar based transistors and gates and logic gates. So this is an AND gate which could be used as a fundamental building blocks for more complex logic circuits. And then, of course, we combine the two. So as mentioned, using indoor photovoltaic lead-free perovskite, we can still harvest enough energy to run an ultra-low power electronic device without battery. So here, this was demonstrated with a millimeter size IPV cell powering a millimeter size printed carbon nanotubes TFT inverter. So the system was self-sustaining with energy coming from indoor photovoltaic, from indoor lighting sources with between 500 and 1,000 lux in terms of luminance. Then another area of interest was the RF. So moving to RF, harvesting and wireless communication. The electromagnetic field is used both to send and receive data, as mentioned, and also to harvest energy from an RF source. In this case, we demonstrated that using a sub-gigahertz radio and an illuminator, meaning an hotspot, in an environment, we can achieve read distances exceeding 2 meters. The other finding was that by embedding both a battery and the supercapacitor in this flexible IoT node, which includes also some sensors, several types of sensors, and the sub-gigahertz energy harvester, we can increase the read distances considerably from, for instance, 2.5 to 4.2 meters, depending on, of course, of the frequency, on the standard frequency which operate the system. These are determined by, of course, by the regional regulations. It could be typically 868 megahertz for Europe and 950 megahertz for other countries. Then in terms of energy storage, another thing that we're looking at is the comparison of various battery technologies available. We preferred focusing on printed zinc based batteries. In fact, a few years ago, we funded a company as a spin-off from the university called Zynergy, or Zynergy Power, which is now commercializing printed flexible battery based on zinc chemistry for the consumer market. And why zinc? Because, of course, first of all, mining of zinc it's easier than other material used in lithium-ion batteries, for instance, cobalt or cobalt and other material, nickel, manganese, and so on. In zinc batteries use aqueous rather than solvent-based inks, so they're intrinsically more environmentally friendly and less flammable. And even the packaging can be a plastic package only rather than a metal plastic laminate, which is required for lithium batteries. And of course, they are harder to delaminate and recycle. Now, moving on from the energy harvesting and storage part to the sensor part, right? So already a few years ago, I think it was in 2013, we published a paper on using graphene field effect transistors as a pH sensor, both in rigid substrate and plastic substrate. The concept is very simple. So basically, graphene field effect transistors are, as you know, ambipolar by nature. The point where the conduction moves from holes to electrons is called the Dirac point, and the Dirac point is influenced by the doping of the channel or other molecules present that interact with the channel during the conduction. And in fact, we demonstrated that as a pH sensor, because hydrogen ion molecules in a solution are easily changing or shifting the Dirac point, which is actually used at the sensing mechanism, and also with a very good reproducibility and linearity as compared to the pH range. Then in the recent years, we have seen a lot of works building on the same concept, where the channel was functionalized with specific receptors and therefore used as biosensors for various analytes like DNA, RNA, proteins, etc. So in 2021, we decided to write a review paper on graphene for biosensing applications in point-of-care testing devices. And we reviewed several technologies and compared also the performance of various technologies, including at that time the graphene field effect bio-GFET used for monitoring the concentration of spike protein associated with the COVID-19 virus testing in specific analytes. More recently, again, building on the same concept, we developed a project in collaboration with GSK, where we looked at one molecule, which is a biomarker of stress, which is present in sweat. The challenge here is that the concentration of this biomarker, which is a neuropeptide Y specifically, is that the concentration is in the range of 180 to 750 picomolar, which is not really a high concentration for that allows other technologies to monitor with label-free biosensors. So we decided to develop this graphene field effect transistor, where the channel was functionalized with NPY antibodies that act as receptors for the specific biomarker, and finally could demonstrate with exactly the same concept a sensitivity down to 1 picomolar in artificial sweat. So and with a very good selectivity also in terms of the different interference species available in sweat that could compromise the reading of this analyte. And this work is, I think, is available because it's the main topic in the thesis of Yannis Pratis, who graduated 1.5 years ago. So it should be available in the thesis, but is also a subject of has actually been prepared for a manuscript. And building upon other graphene-based sensors, I would like to quickly show you a few examples of graphene sensors for wearable devices. So we also work on e-textiles and smart textiles. So in this case, we use graphene combined with PDO-PSS as a conducting polymer for surface electromyography textile dry electrodes formation. So the process is very simple. We started with a standard textile substrate. We used a dispersion of graphene, coated the textile electrode with the graphene ink, then introduced a PDO-PSS solution, and finally processed the final textile and for use as EMG electrodes. And we tested this in okay, let me show you the next slide. We tested this in a configuration, a typical configuration for EMG electrodes, where with the 3 electrodes, all these electrodes were starting from commercially available electrodes, removing the wet part, the gel part, and replacing with our textile dry electrodes. So in this slide, you can see a comparison of a graphene only without PDOT-PSS electrode, the PDOT-PSS only, which is known for the low impedance with skin as a conductive polymer, and then the combined graphene and PDOT-PSS electrode, which achieves the lowest impedance in the frequency range, which are typically used for EMG. Not only that, but also in terms of stability, as you can see, the PDOT-PSS tends to have a slight degradation over time when immersed in water, while the graphene PDOT-PSS coated electrode maintains its stability over time. We believe that the graphene acts as a material. And we proved the effectiveness of this dry electrode in a simple example or a simple experiment for hand gesture recognition. So the standard configuration in the forearm of the 3 electrodes was used to collect the data. We also used a transfer learning to optimize the training process and the test over 2 different users. The system was tested on 6 hand gesture just based on the EMG electro signals. So this is the backbone of the neural network used for this experiment. As you can see from the results, we compared this with a wet electrode with transfer learning, as well as with a textile electrode with and without the transfer learning. And the results are quite comparable, meaning that we could achieve similar results than the gold standard wet electrodes based EMG hand gesture recognition with our dry electrode, of course, removing the need of gel and the impact of this to the user, which will prefer, of course, a dry electrode, besides the fact that the gel electrolytes tend to dry out over time. So it is well known that for long-term measurement, dry electrodes should be preferred. Another area is, again, on graphene textile sensors. We also use a similar process to coat textile to act as a strain sensors. We discovered that the mechanism behind the strain sensing in graphene coated textiles can be related to microcracks and the formation of order microcracks in the textile structure that actually determine a reversible approach for strain sensing with a relatively high sensitivity, higher than other techniques, for instance, based on piezoelectric materials. Also the process is relatively simple. Again, we exfoliate graphene from graphite. In this case, I think it was artificial graphite, then deposited with a screen printing process, and then tested as a strain sensor and already embedded in the textile structure. So this work was published in MPJ Flexible Electronics earlier this year. Yeah, this explains the mechanism of the microcracks that we explored investigated in this work, and also the characteristics in terms of strain sensitivity. Why we are interested to this area? Because, of course, as you can see, the amount of strain we are looking at is between sort of 0 and 5–10% up to 20%, and all the existing works at that time were showing a relatively low strain gauge factor in this specific range. while of course in other range, there are technologies that can achieve a very high gauge factor over exceeding 1000. But in our application, we were looking at the specific range where we could achieve gauge factors in excess of 300, simply because we wanted to apply this work to analysis of speech or analysis of breath. So in the paper published, we demonstrated, in fact, that this device could decode speech signals that were associated with a micro movement in the throat when the person is trying to pronounce words. And this works either for healthy humans than with also for patients. For instance, patients who have undergone laryngectomy, which prevent them to actually pronounce the word. So microphones will not work in that case. And then our device can interact with the residual muscle activity and map the micro movement into words through a smart system powered by an artificial neural network. We demonstrated this on a smart choker device. And then starting from that, we could also see the patterns of the breath, of the breathing or respiration patterns in a normal condition, as well as during sleep. So we also developed the work on, which I will talk about in a second, on breath monitoring for sleep conditions. So here you see an example of the signal characteristics showing the sensitivity and the very high signal to noise ratio. So this was when the user didn't wear the choker, then they start using the choker. So all these signals are noise signals, either physiological or flicker noise. And when the person was starting to pronounce the first word, which was sheep, then this was the resulting signal. Then we started to look at words that have very similar pronunciation in English, like sheep, and you can see a very different pattern, which is easily recognized by the neural network. So why I'm saying that? Because of course other technologies fail in this. So it's very common in language processors and speech analysis to have confounding words. So words that can easily be confounded to each other, like in this case or others. So we tested the device on a standard set of standard data set of words, which are recognized as the gold standard for testing language processing systems. Sorry. Yeah, again, here we use transfer learning. Why? Because, of course, once we train the system to recognize a predefined set of words from a user, then we want to transfer the same knowledge acquired by the network to new users or new words. So the transfer learning is an ideal tool to do that. And we could achieve a very high accuracy with the new users, as in this case, or new words after just a few retraining cycles. And also another point that is very important to stress is the computational complexity, because of course, in order to reduce power, we also need to reduce the computational complexity of our algorithms. Without that, of course, the system will require still a lot of power to operate, specifically the AI processor for inference, when it comes to running complex algorithms. So an important aspect to compare is the accuracy versus the complexity in terms of flops, floating operation per second. So here we compared both the network per se after pruning and so on, as compared to standard network. So we achieve the highest accuracy with the lower complexity, and also the overall approach comparing our sensor with strain sensors and other EMG sensors available in the state of the art, with tested with different data sets. And in both cases, we achieve the best performance over the state of the art. I was mentioning breath analysis. This is a work which is still under review, although I think it's available in archive. For those of you who are interested. So here, basically, we expanded on the strain gauges on textile by developing a new structure and actually a new mechanism as well for an array of sensing devices with a matrix of strain gauges, which could capture the breathing signals, again, the motion patterns associated with breathing, and based on these signals, recognize both healthy, sub-healthy, and risky conditions. What I mean here is basically the healthy condition is typically a nasal breathing. So by monitoring this pattern, we could see whether the pattern is consistent with the nasal breathing pattern or with mouth breathing, which is considered as a sub-healthy, in some cases with snoring or even with bruxism, which is another condition for some of the patients. And then recognize the more risky patterns, which are the sleep apnea, the two types of sleep apnea, central or obstructive sleep apnea. So we tested, we developed this device and tested the accuracy, achieving very good accuracy after training. And again, in terms of complexity versus accuracy, we are positioned beyond the other works in state of the art. The reason for working for using an array here is basically to provide insensitivity to artifacts. The artifact could be either the reposition of movement of the sensing area in the textile during night, because of course people doesn't stay necessarily steady, so it's very easy that the sensor will relocate or will move slightly, and this architecture can basically compensate for the movement and return the actual signals filtered from the artifacts. There are also other artifacts that could be triggered, so could be filtered with this approach. And then in terms of AI part, we used a pruned ensemble AI model to optimize the computational complexity, as mentioned, versus the accuracy. Finally, I think
Luigi, excuse
yes.
me for the interruption. Just to inform you that we have only a few minutes more, so if you can summarize or conclude in 1 or 2 minutes, then
sorry,
we have some time for the applicants to ask questions. Sorry for this, but
absolutely, yes, I will summarize. Yes, okay. So in this case, this was really the last part, but perhaps I can skip. This slide. I would like just to mention that we are working on human motion prediction analysis, and the application is for wearable exoskeletons. We published a review paper on human motion intention prediction. Why this is important? Because if we can anticipate the intention to execute a movement, then using a wearable sensors, then we can, and multimodal analysis, then we can reduce the latency between the control system and the actual exoskeleton. So this is a project we are running at the moment, where we use graphene EMG sensors, strain sensors, and IMUs to collect data from human and use this data to develop a human body digital twin of the different part of the body, which is used in turn to control the wearable exoskeleton. In this case, we wanted to have an exoskeleton that reduces the fatigue in elders, so people who have not lost their muscle or their motion, but they start to experience a reduced strain in the muscle due to age. And this will be compensated by the exoskeleton, and in order to do that, we develop a human body digital twin personalized to the user. And in order to understand the impact of the different scenario, we use a respirometry to measure the metabolic consumption. So the CO2 specifically is a indirect measurement of the fatigue in terms of metabolic consumption. Okay, so to summarize, I hope I convinced you that AI-powered wearable electronics are there to boost the market of personalized healthcare and assistive technologies. Edge AI is in great need of ultra-low power electronics, as well as energy harvesting and computationally efficient architecture technologies. And we believe that the adoption of human body digital twins can help accelerate design and validation of emerging technologies, which reduces the need for extensive clinical studies on individuals, which typically is part of the challenge for developing new technologies through clinical trials. Okay, I would like to acknowledge, of course, my group members and alumni and the sponsors. Okay, and if you are interested in the field of biosensors in general, we organized a conference, an IEEE Biosensor conference last year in Cambridge, and the next year one will be organized in San Diego, California. Okay, that's all from my side. Thanks for your attention, and sorry for running behind.
Thank you, Luigi, for this excellent presentation. I think you cover all the activities of the school, from materials to devices, energy storage, and electronics for IoT. I think there are many questions in the chat, so really maybe we can try to ask the first ones, and maybe we can send the questions to the speaker through an email, and then we can circulate the replies of the speakers to the applicants of the school. But let's try some questions until we have to give the floor to next speaker later in 5 minutes. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Occhipinti, for this enlightening talk. Actually, we have a lot of questions for your presentation, which is really good. I will start with the question, Mr. Kumar's question, which is a two-part question. What is the efficiency and energy storage density of zinc, and which techniques are being used to dope the channel?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't catch which. What is the efficiency of?
Yes, of course. What is the efficiency and energy storage density of zinc?
Of
zinc.
zinc.
Zinc-based supercapacitor.
That's a good question. So in terms of capacity, it very much depends on the interface components and the electrodes components. We have, I don't have the figure off the top of my head. I can provide this information later on. But the good thing is that we demonstrated batteries that can power directly Bluetooth low energy devices. So it's also because the main challenge was the peak current available. And with the latest technology, we can run up to 20 milliamps with a dual cell battery, providing 3 volts.
Okay, thank you. I think we can answer 1 or 2 questions more, and the rest of them we will send you by email if you want to answer to our participants. So the next question is, how can graphene-based biosensors be combined with wearable technologies to enable real-time health monitoring and data transmission with minimal power consumption?
Yeah, so basically the way we in the 2 examples I mentioned, so we looked at graphene as a material to be used with the textile electrodes, and the reason is that by reducing skin impedance, we can get basically higher signal to noise ratio, which means that the complexity of the circuit and the algorithms required to decode the signals can be reduced significantly. The reduction of complexity means that in turn we can lower the power consumption at the system level. So it's all connected to some extent to either the low impedance or, in the case of strain gauges, to the ultra sensitivity demonstrated, or the higher sensitivity demonstrated by these devices.
Thank you. And we have time for one more question. Regarding the research in biosensors, how much of that is carried out by university and how much done by private companies and startups? Is the research mostly...
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, we basically we work with companies. However, in the case of biosensor, the initial work is always done in our labs. So we have I have in my group, it's a quite multidisciplinary. So I have experts in biology, experts in clinical sciences, and also in medicinal chemistry, and they work alongside engineers and physicists to develop and optimize the devices on specific use case application. Once the device is demonstrated at the proof of concept level, of course, we keep working with the company to industrialize, commercialize, or exploit the IP in general.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we don't have time more for
thank
other
you so
questions.
much.
Let's thank
Yes.
again Professor Occhipinti
Again,
for this.
Professor Occhipinti, I'd like to thank you once more for accepting our invitation.
No problem. Thank you for inviting.
Okay.
And sorry for running out of time. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
And
No problem.
we can move to our next speaker.